video 2 on the Vauxhall H project. First of all, what we're going to be looking at as part of this project is to refurb the wheels. Now they're in pretty bad shape. So far what I've been able to do is to take off all the old paint and lacquer with a wire brush attachment for a drill. So now what we're going to do is take off the wheel, take them somewhere a wee bit better and sand them down. Try and get them nice and smooth, sort of sort out all of the curb rash around the edges. We'll use some body filler to fill all those in and respray them a nice silver colour and give them a good coat of lacquer. So we'll just start by taking the wheels off. Now just remember, when you are taking your wheels off, to loosen the nuts before you actually jack the car up. I'm just trying to take these off. And this one here is actually the locking nut for this car, so if you actually have the lock. Okay, so we now got the tyre off. I've left it sitting there. Because the tyre is going to be going away, I had nothing to actually prop up under the car, so what I've done is a good old gypsy way and put a couple of breeze blocks under it. What I'll do is, because I will be respraying the nuts at the end of the day as well for safekeeping, I'm just going to put them back in their holes. That way they won't get lost, because I'll probably be at this for a day or a day and a half until the wheels is actually finished. Then move on, take the other wheel off, and then we'll be able to start refurbing the alloys. Now the wheels are off the car. Best thing to do before we do anything to refurb them is to actually give them a good clean with a power hose. If you don't have a power hose, a normal hose will do. Just give them a good scrub. If you're only going to do the outside of the rims, you're not going to bother with the inside. It's probably as much as far as you have to go. Just while I've got them off, inside of these ones were sort of caked on with brake dust, so I thought I'd give them a good hosing as well. Might as well, seeing we've got them off. So I'll just let them dry, and once they're dry we'll be able to go over it with a first run of sandpaper. I've got to go for a rough sandpaper for the first time round. Make sure we get any of the loose contaminants, paint, lacquer all off. Start with probably P120 and then maybe work on from there. So I'll leave these to dry now, and then we'll come back to start. Okay, now the tyre's dry. I'm going to go over it now with 120 sandpaper. I'm just using this 120 sandpaper bought from B&Q, and literally all I'm going to be doing is go around, roughing it up and trying to get any of the lacquer and paint off that I wasn't able to get off with the bloody wasp. So with this you just go around the entire edges, roughen it all up. Once I've gone around with 120, we're going to give it a wash, get all the loose stuff off. Once all that's off, so look at filling in around the edges. And that's around the edge, these bits in the middle as well, where the paint is cracked on it. But also go for that with the 120. Try and get a better surface for either filling or to get a better paint fill into them. So we'll look at this again once I've gone over the 120 and take it on to the next step from there. Okay, what I'm doing here now is just going over the rest of the wheel with 120 grit. What this will do is just take off any loose bits. You can see like bits here and here where they've been scraped and scuffed. It's just giving it a bit of a, take it back a bit. There's little bumps which will need filled. What it'll also allow us to do is when it comes to painting, it'll give it something for the primer and the paint to stick to, rather than just trying to stick it onto the lacquer that's currently on top of those alloys. So we'll get this finished off. You could take it down to then a lower grit paper, but what I'm going to do first is finish this, give them a wash, get all the loose dirt, the contaminants all off it. Then I'll do the filler, and then what I'll do is I'll get it into shape, and then I'll go down the grits then. I think I'll go to 400 next, and then maybe one more grit up, maybe 800 or 1000 before putting any primer on it. Then once the primer and stuff's on it, you go down through the grits again, get a nice smooth finish, make sure there's no lumps and bumps, deep scratches in anymore before putting the paint on. So we'll finish these off and give them a wash, and then once the wheels are dry then from being washed, we'll be in a position to start doing the fill. Okay, now just to give them a wash. Once they're washed, we let them dry, give them a good dry, then we'll be in a position then to fill. So let's get these washed. Just try and get all the dust, all the old collecting and all the wee nooks and crannies, get it all out. So we don't want this to get into the fill. That will stop it contacting properly. Around the edge where we're going to be doing the fill for the curb brush, so you can make sure that is all well dried before we do it. But in this case here, what I'm doing is I'm just getting, make sure all the dirt is out. Now just leave them to dry. Once they're dry, we'll be able to start filling. Front tire here is now dry. Sort of one last step to do before we do proceed on to the filler is to ensure there's no grease or oil on the alloy itself down in any crevices which are going to have the filler applied. If there's any oil or grease in there, the filler may not take and then eventually just come off. So what I've got here is some Gunk Natural Green degreaser and cleaner. Just going to use it with a cloth here. Give the alloy a good rub over, allow that to dry off, wipe clean, and then proceed on with the filling of it. So what we're going to do here is just throw some of this onto the and then just go around everywhere that we're going to be filling. As you see, there's all grease, muck, grime. Not even after 2 power hoses and a wash, it's still on there. So just around the whole thing, especially around the edges here where it's going to be the filler applied. But do go over the full tire itself. Again. There are a number of nicks and bumps on the spokes. So just need to make sure we get in there. Make sure you wear gloves with these things because there are chemicals in there which will harm you. So you can sort of see from that cloth there that what you thought would have been a clean wheel to start on, there's lots of hidden deposits there. Now those are off, we'll be in a better place to do the filling. So I'll just give it one more going over and then we'll start mixing up the fill. Just on a side note, when I'm waiting on the alloys to dry there from the degreaser, is that now would actually be the perfect opportunity to paint the calipers, if it is something you're going to do. So while the wheels is off, and save having to take your freshly painted alloys back off again in the near future. I should have thought about this further back and been ready for it. Unfortunately I don't have the caliper paint to do it, so I will have to come back and take the wheels off again. But just for yourselves, if you're in the middle of this process or you're watching this video and it is something you're thinking about doing, do think about doing the calipers while you have the wheels off. Okay, now the degreaser's all dry, we're ready to move on to the hardener. I've given it a wipe over with a tack cloth just to make sure there's no more dust or anything just sitting on top of it. It's all come out good and clean. I got the hardener from Halford's and I've just finished mixing it up there. It's usually golf ball size hardener, or of the mix to a pea size of the hardener. You don't usually get that much time now to get it on. It does dry pretty quickly, but basically what we're going to be doing here is areas that do need touched up, such as over here for the curb rash. It's just to go around it, trying to fill in all of those rough bits. And do try and be neat, because what you don't want to have to do is to spend hours sanding it all back after it's had a chance to harden. So sort of if you're neat as you're going along, it will make life a little bit easier when it comes to sanding it when you're finished. So yeah, just go around anywhere that needs done. This one here, that's really opposed to the other one. It's more the curb brush. The other one actually has more dents out on the spoke. But this one here is more just where we've hit the curb. Okay, once you're finished with the hardener, you leave it to set as per the instructions. Now this one here that I got out of Halfords says 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll leave this one and that one to harden up now for 20 to 30 minutes. Do a bit of tidying up, get a cup of tea, and then we'll come back. When we come back then we'll look at doing the sanding, getting this all down into shape, because it's all like quite thick there. You can sort of see there's a few areas I had to go pretty thick on, especially on the spoke. Up here as well. So we'll probably start with 400 wet and dry, get it back into shape, and then neaten it up with 1000 or 1500 before putting any paint near it. So we'll get a cup of tea. Okay, it's been about half an hour or so now. The hardener's all hard. It's not tacky anymore. So we're good to start with the initial phase of sanding. Starting here with some P400 wet and dry. I have a water bottle there for spraying onto the both the alloy and the paper. I do suggest you wear a mask when doing this because there's going to be a lot of fine filings from both the alloy, the filler, and any remaining paint that may be on the alloys. So we'll just start by giving the alloy a bit of a spray. And sort of same as before, it is just a slow process. Take your time, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to take too much of the filler you've put in out. You want to get it to a nice shape. You don't want to have to be coming back again and putting more filler in. Hopefully you put enough in this time. That will do the job for you. What the 400 will also do is to take out any scrapes, deeper scrapes that you've done with the 120 grit. Well, that I done with the 120 grit. Obviously you can do whatever grits suit your requirements. In my case it was 120 and followed up by this one. So again, we'll just go around slowly, taking our time on it. I'll start with around the edges. I'll move on then onto the spokes, and then what I'll do is I'll go over the whole lot again in 120, ensuring that everything has got an even rub, so when we do come to it or onto the next phase, everything should be equal and even, and hopefully ready then for painting. So I'll continue on here, and I'll come back once I've got this 400 grit finished. Okay, I've just finished doing the 400 grit sanding on the alloy. I see there's a lot of gunk and grime all there now, so before we can go any further we need to give it a bit of a rinse, let it dry. Then once it's dry we need to do another pass of degreaser on it just to make sure there's nothing else there. Then all it is from there is to tape it up and start getting priming. So I'll just start by giving this a rinse here now. You can start seeing all that filings, all that small sanding from all the alloy, the filler, all sort of coming off it there now. I'll then put this to dry. Once it's dry, then start taping up. Getting there. It's another step down. Tire's now dry, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over it now with a degreaser. Let the degreaser dry off. Then we'll tape it all up and start priming. First, just rub over it again with a degreaser. Make sure there's no other deposit there. Make sure all the dust from the sanding has all been lifted. There's just no contaminants on it. So there's a few wee bits and pieces there. But we are in a better place now for when it comes to priming and painting. Now what I'll do is I'll let this dry. So I can't spray onto this as it won't adhere to the metal. So I'll let this dry and then I'll begin taping up. Then we'll move on to spraying. Okay, I'm sort of running into problems now this evening with the lack of light. Things sort of took a wee bit longer today than I thought of. But I have the tires all taped up now, making sure the tires are all covered. Just put a bit of cardboard behind just for any spray that goes awry. I bought this grey primer from Halfords. What I'm going to do first of all is lay down a tack layer, so a really light layer that allows further layers to attach to, just to give it something to get a grip of. The second coat of primer going a little bit thicker. I'll make sure and concentrate on the areas, especially around the edges and stuff, where I done the filler, and the areas with filler, especially on the spokes and stuff. And then start filling in the rest of it with a thicker coat of primer. So probably 2 to 3 coats of primer before I put any paint on it. I'll say first of all we'll put a light tack layer on this first of all. Make sure wear a mask with this, as it is aerosol. You don't want to be breathing in paint into your lungs. So let's give this a try now. Make sure it's well shaken. Let's try this direction here. There's a tack layer on. What that'll do, that'll allow the next couple of coats to take a lot better. So we'll see how this dries up. The can says 20 to 30 minutes. So I'll come back in 20 to 30 minutes and give it another coat. Yeah, it's been 20 minutes or so now. The first little tack layer is dry to the touch. So what I'll do now is I'll put a thicker layer on now. Probably be the only one I'll get to do tonight. I'll say it's getting a bit dark and it's hard to sort of see where it needs to go, so I'll give this a good going over now. I'll just get the other tyre ready for tomorrow first thing. I'll be able to have a look at this, see if this needs any more, and then take it to the next stage. So I'll just lay this on now. That'll probably do it for tonight. I suppose depending on how light, I may try and get another one done. It's quite hard to actually try and see how it's actually going on in this light. It's hard to see in the camera, but in the naked eye it doesn't look too bad. I'd say it might actually need another 2 coats. I see 1 or 2 imperfections, which probably during a sanding they would come out, but I want to make sure I have enough undercoat on there to ensure that I can get them out. So I'll leave this one for now. I have another one there ready to get primed. I want to try and get that done tonight. That'll do it. Pick it up again with you guys in the morning. Okay, last night before I put this away, I did come out and give it another coat. And then this morning what I've done is there was a couple of little imperfections, a couple of little runs and bubbles. So what I done was I just used some 1500 grit paper, wet and dry. Rubbed it down a little and then washed and degreased it. It's now dry again. So what we're ready to do is to put the colour on. I got this Ford Stardust Silver. Seemed to be a good match for what it was that I'm actually after, so I'm going to start laying it down now. Just like the primer, I'll lay down a bit of a light coat so you get a feel for it, and then put a couple more coats on before lacquering it. So I'll try here now. Again, just be sure to be wearing your face mask, you don't want to be breathing this in. So I'll lay that down first of all. According to the can, is 25-30 minutes dry time, and I'll be able to put another coat back on it. We'll see how it's looking then. But sort of comparing that to the original, you can see they are starting to come together now. The first coat is dried pretty well here. It's all dry to the touch. I'm going to go ahead and start laying on a couple of extra coats. I'll probably put 2 more coats onto this before coming onto the lacquer. One thing I have forgot to mention so far are the nuts. Don't forget to do the nuts. I sort of forgot about it earlier on in the video. Yeah, so I'm going to lay down 2, maybe 3 coats of the colour and then progress onto the lacquer. So I'll continue on here. Okay. Let that dry for 25 minutes. Come back, do another coat. I'll continue on then, sure. I'll pick the video up again. I'm about to do the clear coat. I finished all the painting. What I did do before the last coat of paint was to go over the layers beforehand with 1500 paper. The reason I done that was that there was a couple of areas just weren't looking too good. They were a wee bit bubbly at the time, so I just smoothed those out and then just give it one last coat just over the lot of it, and that's give us a good finish. Now it's fully dry now, so it's time to put the lacquer on. The lacquer, just the same with the rest of it. Start with a light coat all over it and then build up the coats. We'll probably put 3 coats of lacquer in this just to give it a good protective finish. Oh. So I'll do the first coat, let that dry, and then I'll come back and put another coat. It says every 25 minutes. So I'll allow 25 minutes, come back, put another coat on. And once this has had a couple of coats of lacquer, then we're good to put it back in the car.